Hello and good morning to Dr. Q. Today my team and I would like to present to you about the factors that influence Malaysia's export performance. So, let me start with the introduction of our group members.
Hi, I'm Nishingi and my metric number is L175774.
Assalamualaikum and hi, I'm Nurhidayati binti Sitri and my matrix number is A176064.
Hi, my name is FADHILAH binti ROSLI. My metric number is A175043.
Hi, I'm Hannah and my metric number is A173608. For the introduction of this topic, I will start with the issue. Malaysia's economy has experienced significant expansion during the last 5 decades. This expansion has been accompanied by low inflation, decreased unemployment, decreased poverty, decreased income disparity, and increased per capita income. Malaysian economic development has relied heavily on the manufacturing sector, which has contributed significantly to output, employment, investment, and export. However, the export industry has been considered as a major pillar in strengthening the Malaysian economy. It also makes the country guided by the variability of external factors. So, the study objective is to identify the factors that influence export in Malaysia and the relationship between the factors and export performance. And for the problem statement of this study is to analyze Malaysia's export competitiveness based on domestic macroeconomic variables rather than a specific sector or industry.
Next, we move on to the literature review part. Let's look to the our dependent variable, which is export performance. The importance of exports for international trade has tremendously increased in recent years. The determinants of the export performance has been widely discussed in developing and developed countries as well as countries in transition. A large number of empirical studies have predominantly confirm the linkage between macroeconomic factors such as exchange rate volatility, economic growth, internal trade, and every presence of foreign investment, according to Neura and others, Emao and others. Besides, in the other study, Yi and others, they use the yearly data for Malaysia from the World Bank that covering the time period from 1975 to 2013 for export, import, inflation, FDI, and foreign exchange rate to examine the link between export and independent variables in Malaysia using time series analysis. According to their findings, import and foreign exchange rate were found to have a positive relationship with export, while FDI and inflation showed a negative relationship with export. Then, for independent variables, first, exchange rate. There are several theoretical and empirical models attempt to explain the impacts of exchange rate volatility in trade flows. In the previous study, Yusof and Baharum Shah conducted a research to examine the effects of the Malaysian ringgit real exchange rate on the export demand for Malaysian primary commodities under alternative specification and estimation procedures. The results showed that the price and exchange rate were found to be inelastic, meaning an increase in demand for export may not be big enough to improve the balance of trade. However, on the theoretical front by A. Galvini, the research demonstrates how an increase in exchange rate volatility may not necessarily affect the level of trade. The results showed the stochastic properties of deviation from the law of one price are crucially affected by the currency denomination of export price, but also to price staggering. Hence, hypothesis 1 can be explained with there is a significant relationship between exchange rate and export. Next variable is inflation rate. In the previous studies, Pito Nakova conducted research to identify the determinants of road vehicle export from Slovakia to the UK, with one of the determinants being the short-term and long-term effects of inflation rates. Inflation positively impacts export, although the effect is not statistically significant. Meanwhile, Muqtadi Al-Mukid and Shafiullah are good in their research using monthly time series data from Bangladesh found that the analysis result revealed that inflation has a negative impact on export, both in the long run and the short run. Hence, we can say that there is a significant relationship between inflation rate and export for hypothesis 2. Apart from inflation rate, the factors of foreign direct investment also influence export, which are the last variable in this study. Based on the previous research by Nasir Salimi, it shows that the FDI positively affect export performance in the sample countries in various model specifications. And also, Branislav Mitic found in their research that there is a significant level of correlation between FDI and export of goods, with the stronger correlation in the case of high-tech export. Therefore, hypothesis 3 can be explained by significant relationship between FDI net inflows and exports.
Okay, I'm Hidayati. We'll continue with the data and methodology. For research and empirical analysis, we only focus on the Malaysia typical export, and each data was required to be initiated about 30 years ago to ensure the comparability in performance, which is from 1991 until 2020. The measurement and modeling of export performance should be used not only quantitative characteristics of the total export, but also the quality of export performance, which determined by the international factors. Therefore, the data series included Malaysia exports of goods and services, exchange rate, inflation rate, and net foreign direct investment inflows that were extracted from the World Development Indicators of the World Bank and Bank Negara Malaysia. After extracting all the data from reliable sources, we have used a multiple regression model to illustrate the factors that affect exports in Malaysia. So this is the basic formula. Then we adjusted it based on our study context, where Y is the Malaysia's export, X is the independent variables, alpha beta shows the parameters of the model, and T is the period of the study. This slide shows 4 figures of variables time profile, where we can see the trend line of Malaysia's total exports, the exchange rate of 1 Malaysian ringgit to USD, inflation rate, and the total FDI net inflows. From this figure, the total exports and FDI net inflows of Malaysia shows an increasing trend, while inflation rate and exchange rate decreased during the period study. It was found that from 1991 to 1997, all trends were consistent and stable before having a drastic changes and fluctuating trends in all variables from 1997 onwards. This is due to the Asian financial crisis in 1997 and the global financial crisis from 2007 to 2008. Next is the summary statistic, where we calculate the average, standard deviation, mean, and max of each variable. Data in the table shows that Malaysia's average annual total export is $144.3 billion, with a standard deviation of $69.9 billion, which is less than the average value of its export. Similarly to other variables where the value of its standard deviation is less than the average value. Furthermore, we can see that the data for all of the variables are in positive value, except for minimum value of inflation rate, where the lowest rate is negative 1.14%, and also for the FDI net inflow, where the value is less extreme than the maximum value of $15 billion. The summary output of the multi-regression model result is provided in the table here, since we use the Excel tool to analyze which factor has a major impact on Malaysia's export performance. If you look up close to the last row, there are 76.69% variations in export performance is explained by the exchange rate, inflation rate, and foreign direct investment net inflows, while the rest of 23.31% can be explained by other factors in the market. The remaining findings in this table will be explained in more details by Lee Sin Yee.
Good day to Doctor. I'm Nurhidayati. Now I will continue to present the findings. For exchange rate variable as shown in this table, the findings of this study show that the exchange rate has a positive relationship and significant with export ratio due to the p-value statistically significant at 1% level with 0.0047. Hence, an alternative hypothesis is accepted. In general, the theory states that a weaker domestic currency encourages exports and increases import costs. Hence, if you decrease imports and increase exports, finally it met the trade surplus. It conversely for strong domestic currency. For the coefficient data of exchange rate as shown in previous slide, it shows that if Malaysian ringgit decreases by 1 ringgit, the total exports will increase by 436 billion in US dollars. Based on the previous studies, growers state that the volatility of trade depends on people's risk aversions. Hence, if you make the exchange rate volatility have an impact positively on exports of products and services. It says that for inflation rate variable, The findings show that the inflation rate has negative relationship and significant with export ratio due to the p-value is 0.0219, less than the 0.05. Hence, an alternative hypothesis is accepted. According to the theory, the greater the inflation rate in the host country, the lower the overall exports since products and services are more expensive in the host country than in other countries. For the inflation risk coefficient value as shown in the first slide of part findings, it indicates an increase of 1% in the inflation rate may cause a decline in exports by 12 billion in US dollars relatively. It is supported by the previous study of Mutadil Al-Mukid and Safira that also found a negative correlation between parenthesis inflation rate and exports in both the short run as well as the long run. Next, for Russ Rubber, that is FDI net inflows. The findings show that the FDI net inflows has positive relationship, but not significant with export ratio due to the p-value is 8.7755, which exceeds 0.1. Hence, an alternative hypothesis is rejected. Based on the theory, when FDI net inflows grow, the total exports increase as well. And when FDI net inflows decline, the total exports will decrease. The FDI net inflows variable has a positive coefficient that is 0.0131, which indicates that the increase of FDI net inflows will raise exports in the country. Even though the result shows FDI net inflows is not influencing the exports, the area studies have shown otherwise, where the previous researchers of Nasir Surmi, Siti Hajar, and Sharia Mutaruf agree that the increase of FDI can generate new job possibilities, boost technological growth in the host country, and improve the country's overall economic situations that will help to increase the exports of the country.
Next, for the conclusion and recommendation, we can conclude that only two independent variables are significant to the export, which are the exchange rate and inflation rate, while foreign direct investment net inflows is not significant to the export. For future recommendation, researchers are strongly encouraged to collect data in monthly time series. It is particularly useful for testing new impacts because it would provide data collected in real time rather than data collected annually, which is preferable. After all, the actual result may be offset by a month or two due to the government encouragement of foreign investment from another country, which is not always the case. Furthermore, future researchers should also extend the total of export in the export field and analyze more detail in each sector, especially the main sector that contribute a lot to the country's export performance.